This episode of From Angel to Exit is brought to you by Dash. Dash offers remote knowledge workers to streamline workflows for U.S. businesses. Services include CRM management, email organization, social media content, bookkeeping, research, lead generation, and more. Dash professionals save clients time by managing routine tasks, allowing businesses to focus on growth and other high-value activities. For more information, visit hirewithdash.com. Are you serious about planning a successful business exit? From Angel to Exit is your go-to resource. Subscribe to our newsletter at eckfeldt.com/podcast for even more valuable insights. And to get personalized guidance, take our free exit readiness assessment. It's just 24 questions, and it will give you a clear picture of your exit readiness. Find the assessment at eckfeldt.com/exit. Submit your results, and we'll schedule a free follow-up call to discuss your specific situation and the best way to maximize your valuation and ensure a successful transaction. Now, back to the episode. Welcome, everyone. This is From Angel to Exit. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. Our guest today is Tim Murphy. He was a CEO of Boomer Parks. We're going to hear about the story, a lot of interesting kind of backstory there, his experience with M&A and doing deals, and really kind of understanding the complexities and some of the challenges that come up and how to navigate those things and the lessons he's learned around selling companies and kind of the complexities around that. So with all that, Tim, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bruce.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. Before we get into kind of the actual story of Boomer and what you kind of went through there, I'd love to get a little backstory. Like how did you get into business? What was your professional background? Give us the story there.
Well, I think growing up for an entrepreneurial family, you always had to work. So I've been working since I was 8. My parents started with a miniature golf arcade and restaurant in New Jersey. They sell that off. With money of the business they had up there. They sell it off. I come down to Orlando, start working for Disney for 6.5 years, got in the restaurant industry for 30, with about 150 brands and 10,000 locations. And a buddy of mine said, hey, need some help. And a friend of mine has an entertainment company, which was trampoline parks. Got back into that, found value in that company, helped them sell the company. And then eventually, private equity asked me to come down to South America, and so I'm on the board of directors down there with those folks. We're about to sell that asset this year, 100 family entertainment centers, amusement parks, and then eventually Cerberus reached out and said, hey, we're about to repossess different fund from the Carlyle Group. Would you take a look at what we have in North America? And that's where Boomer's Parks came from. It was called Apex Parks Group originally, 16 parks. And we kept 8. I helped select which ones to keep. We took over during the bankruptcy with a stalking horse bid. And at the end of the day, it was during the pandemic with open and closing my parks 4 times. It was crazy year in 2020. But then we were off to the races to really make some money. Bankrupt company losing $10 million. We eventually got to $8 million in EBITDA, sold it for a 6 multiple last year to the Blairo Corporation.
Yeah, a lot of pieces there. I guess, when you originally got involved, and it sounds like you've been kind of in business since you've been 8, but what has been your kind of evolution as a leader in this and going from kind of, operating businesses to kind of really thinking about underlying value and assets and looking at the transactions? Like, how have you kind of shifted and evolved as a leader through some of these things?
Well, and I think over time you start looking at what's the value in this company? Where does it come from? And I'm going to give you a little example, but I'll get into Boomers in a moment. But when I was at Rebounders Trampoline Parks, coming in, it's a franchisor of trampoline parks. There's many in the United States, many brands, many chains. And then you start looking at it going, it's really not the franchisor. We own patents and we haven't enforced patents. So there's value in these patents. How about with 85 claims on trampoline parks, why don't we do something with this? And we got to get a win, because without a win, we've got nothing to go after. So I sued a small private equity firm, won, and said, okay, now I can take it out and sue the biggest ones that are out there because they're all using my patents. And then eventually that gave value to the company that ultimately sold the company, but it wasn't in the franchisor.
Yeah.
When you start looking at Boomers, when you took over, one of the things we needed to change these parks completely. I mean, the previous company had them for 4 years. Many private equity firms have owned them along the way, and Cerberus lent money to them and said, okay, to defer the risk, here's some money, blah, blah, blah. We're behind you on this, sort of. And then eventually they realized, okay, we have to take these back. And do we want to take them back or don't we want to take them back? And they just asked me and said, hey, as a consultant, come in and take a look at what we have first. Tell us what you see in all 16 parks. And I go, you got a diamond in the rough. They're just ran the wrong way. I mean, obviously, management. There's a lot of things to it, but they weren't taken care of. They were deferred maintenance of 4 years, didn't put any money back into these parks. Horrible bathrooms, kitchens, restaurants, arcades, the attractions that they had. How about we put a little bit into it? And also, let's focus on our guests. The previous company was focused on a wrong set of demographics. And I'm saying that's not who's coming through the parks. I've been through all your parks. Let's take a look at it and say, maybe we start giving them the services they need, the food and beverages, liquor, beer and wine, the different things that an adult crowd would look for versus the younger crowd that they were working for. Now, coming from trampoline parks, that's definitely a young crowd.
Yeah.
So I understand that group, right? But you're also not getting corporate events in. You're not getting team building events. You're not getting groups. You're not getting things in where the other side of it is if you focus on these things, you'll get them to come in. And that's ultimately what we were able to do. But when you're looking at your investment, what's driving the revenue? You know, being a CFO and many times before, I'm looking at the numbers going, well, you know, if anything, I'm comparing them to each other, not knowing this particular business, but what do the P&Ls look like? What's popping out as problems? Repairs and maintenance, too low in certain areas, it's too high in others. Actually found out people were stealing in that particular case. So you start looking at it and go, there's a scenario here that says we can do better. What's the industry look like? What's our competitors look like? How are they charging? How are they pricing? Can we do something different? And so all of these things, they're multiple things you're looking at, and you're saying, okay, there's a reasonable assumption here, a hypothesis of what we can do with it. If we change to an older demographic, we create a better experience. You know what? We might actually sell tickets online. We've got to improve the reviews or low 2s and 3s to the high 4s, which we did. But the point is, it's all little steps to get you towards that higher opportunity with what we ultimately saw as a 6 multiple of our earnings when it was a bankrupt company losing 10 million. So lots of steps along the way that you got to look at and say, okay, there's a lot of things we looked at and go, yeah, we're not going to do that. Or it's too costly. You know, we're not going to do I'm working for private equity. Gosh, that's what they don't want you to spend money if you can help it. But you start going through this process, you say, well, if we focus on this, but to me, it's one of the things I did on day one as I set the core values. What did I believe in? What do I think we need to change to? Who do we need to become? Well, we need honesty, integrity, transparency. My team members need to know what's going on. They need to be transparent. They were left in the dark for 4 years before. So let's tell them truly what's good and what's bad. At the end of the day. But beyond that, you start saying, I need accountable people. I need responsible people. I need innovative risk taking. I need profitable sales growth. I mean, these are all core values we put in: safety, guest experience. And we focused on those core values. And I've said this before, and this is how I've always done this as a CFO. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So let's focus on what you can control. So I can't control third parties. I can't control the pandemic.
I can't control weather. Yeah, exactly.
These are the things I can control. So let's focus on that, and let's teach the team what that means. If you just keep it all to yourself, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. And you've got to get everyone to start believing that the core value is what we live by. It's what we hire and fire by. And then ultimately it happens. It finally does happen, but it takes that person that's leading it to constantly beat their chest, talk about it all the time, walk their talk, and then eventually the team members start following along, the corporate folks, the park managers, the rest of the park. Now, that doesn't mean that I just set it and forget it. Okay, we're done. I have to continuously do this every time I go out and see a park. And that's how you start seeing the changes to get to where you need to be. But you start, to me, I always start with the P&L. What's wrong here? What's really glaring? And then, you know, it's great to look at a P&L, which is what my predecessor did with the previous company that went bankrupt, but he never went out to his parks.
I never actually saw it. I
went to my parks all the time to visit, talk to the guests, talk to the team members, just to view what's going on here. Do I see things that are wrong? Boy, that had to open up my eyes. It's like, wow, there's so many things that are wrong. From team members to guest experience. They're not taking care of the bathrooms. They're not taking care of the kitchen. They're not following standards. There's no SOPs anywhere. But you start enforcing this, and now you have a well-oiled machine that eventually says, hey, there's value in this. Someone's willing to pay for the value. And lo and behold, we had a strategic buyer come in and buy us.
How I just find, you know, I work with a lot of these founder CEOs that have been, you know, they find these businesses, they develop them, they grow them, but they're so enmeshed in them, they have a hard time kind of taking a step back and kind of seeing, okay, what value are we really creating here? And where is not only the growth opportunity, but where is the enterprise value opportunity? And ultimately, why is someone going to buy this, or why are we going to create value in terms of transaction? I guess, what do you think you do when you come in, and whether it's looking at the P&L or visiting the park? Like, what do you do that a founder could kind of learn from in terms of how to really objectively look at your business and find that the real value creation opportunity, and what you really probably need to let go of in order to really scale a business from a value point of view, not just from a growth point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think really you've got to take a step back and take a look at the macro level of where you're at or where you're at in the industry.
Okay.
In the case of, what I had to deal with in the parks, I don't know what my competition was in California. I didn't live in California,
Yeah.
right? I had to get out there and take a look at it and
Yeah.
go see the competition and see who's doing things really good. And you can first review competition, one, by sight, two, by the reviews that they're getting. What's their experience like? You're also going to know when you physically go in where the problems are. In my case, when I looked at the competition, there was price issues, service issues. Service was a given everywhere you went. I mean, it just wasn't there. But you could tell the team members and the competitors were not focused on the guest. Who's paying the bill coming in, and what are they coming in for? And those that did really well, they spent more time with the guest. Well, I found the same thing with boomers. I looked at, what were we doing with our guests? I was a guest because I was a consultant first, right? So I'm going around these parks. They don't know who I am. I'm just showing up and going to the parks, and I'm seeing no eye contact with me from managers or team members. No one's talking to me. Frankly, I walked past someone in one of the parks. The manager's playing cards with two of the team members sitting on a picnic table outside. Doesn't care that I'm walking past. I'm a paying guest. Doesn't even say, "Hey, how you doing? Have a great day." Nothing. They're into their own little world. Well, that says a lot to the guest, right? That there's no one really watching this place. They're doing whatever they want to do. Corporate is not coming in and checking them. And I did find that out. Corporate never came in and checked them.
Yeah.
So why do they have to change? So view it yourself. What do you feel like? In our case, is guest experience, right? So I always want to act like I'm a guest when I came into the parks. So if I've gone to my competition, I've seen what's the best and the worst. What are the things that I want to make sure that when I'm looking at our parks, what's the best and the worst? And wow, a lot of worst all over the place. I mean, there was just signs everywhere that said this needs to change. Then eventually you get to the point where you teach team members eye contact. I actually put my team through Disney's Institute of Guest Service.
Yeah.
We can understand the differences of what's really good service versus what's bad.
Yeah.
And, and how do they do what they do? To get in their mindset, I said, we're going to be Disney-like, but at a fraction of the cost. So now that my team members are starting to understand a little bit about this, but one of the things you look at is just what's the competition doing? What's the macro level of what's going on? What can I price this at? Can I go higher than where we are?
Yeah.
A lot of people get so afraid. I can't take the price
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
I bet you can. I bet you can. But, but I also believe if you're not going to change your service, your experience, then you probably can't take your price up. Guests are going to complain for sure.
Let me dig into that one, because I'm curious, because I find this a lot where people become so scared of raising prices because they're essentially the argument is, we're going to lose volume, right? Like, we're going to lose customers and things like that. And I'm like, okay, let's do the calculations, right? Like, if we increase prices by 20% and we lose 10% of our customers, in the end, we're actually increasing our profit, even though we're decreasing our revenue. What is that kind of process for you when you look at price elasticity, or like do you have any techniques or ways of looking at price to volume and profit that help you understand really what the best pricing is?
I looked at it just the same way that you just explained it, because ultimately, if I can just take the price up, now that doesn't mean it's ultimately the first thing you do, right?
Yeah.
But, I will say when I got there, I did start taking the prices up immediately. And people are like, "You can't do that." It's like, yes, we can. I needed to fire the discounter that was coming in.
Yeah,
Someone
exactly.
that was really looking for, and I'll say, in my world of retail-ish, I talk about the Walmart shopper. I don't want to be the Walmart shopper, the discounting leader. I want to be the Target shopper, if you will, a little more educated, looking for a better experience, willing to pay a little bit more because of that experience.
Yep.
I need to move from this discounter. Now, it doesn't mean I could do that day one. I mean, I had season passes. They were giving away things for, free time, and I'm paying for labor and I'm paying for costs that are going into the business. So we got to get away from that. I said, we need to be profitable on every guest. That's, what does it take to be profitable? Do we even know what our break even is with labor and cost and food cost and everything else that goes into this? We don't.
Yeah.
No one could give me a clear explanation. I said, well, first thing we're going to do is take price up, and we're going to start moving in that direction. By the way, guys, your competition's actually charging a little bit more than you are. So don't tell me that you can't do it. You can do it. All right. So there's opportunity there. But we also need to change this experience. We need to go to that target shopper, that better educated shopper. Well, that means a lot of things we have to change. How do we train people? I mean, I go back to restaurant days where we have lineups before people physically go out on the floor. We talk about specials, we talk about who's coming in, the parties, whatever it might be, and just to make them aware of what's going on, not just show up, put an apron on, and you go.
Yeah.
That's the mentality of our industry, unfortunately, family entertainment. Unlike Disney or Universal, because that's not the case.
Yeah.
They do train them properly. But the point is, in the family entertainment space with over 10,000 locations, there's a lot of places you can go, but who's going to give you the best experience? So how do we get this across? And let's start taking this price up. Let's start moving in the right direction. We got to start cleaning and fixing these buildings. We need to start doing things we hadn't done before. We repainted all buildings. We spent like $14 million on all 8 parks to get them where they should be. And at the end of the day, it created more value to it. It created a better experience. So with it, for an owner looking at this and saying, what can I do? First, you got to go to your competition. What can I do? What can't I do?
Yeah.
You know what? And you can still always push a little bit farther if you have better experience, if you have a better service that you're providing. That's where, it gets in the mentality of people that are even working. And when I took over these parks, 16 separate parks, I kept 8. So I knew who I was going to keep and not keep. And some of that was logistical. But at the end of the day, it's like, this is where value can be created out of this. This is where we can go into this. And frankly, I can charge whatever I want. You're in my 4 walls. You're not going to probably run down the street to go to a fast food place or a quick fast casual place. How do I create better food so you don't do those things? How do I create that? So that's part of F&B's working on this side of it and trying to get better and better quality products and meals in there. We're creating a better experience with the guests, the interaction we have with the guests. All these little pieces, we can do those things, but you got to stay behind it. You can't give up. You can't take your foot off the accelerator. You have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get to that direction. You will get to a better experience off of this. You will get better guests, and they will pay more. You have to have the belief. But if you just say, hey, I'm going to do these 1 or 2 things, I've had so many people come to me from a consulting side. It says, what's a low-hanging fruit I can do? There's plenty of things. And I'll always just say, take price up. I can't take price up. Yeah, because you're not going to do the other things you need to do,
exactly.
right? Well, you're not going to fix the place. You're not going to do better service. You're not going to teach your team members. You're just looking for a quick answer, quick silver bullet, and there is none. We did thousands of things to turn these parks around. And, from each place is all a little different. How do we do it? How do we tie into our demographic? Those are the things that, we need to understand, because I had 8 separate parks in 8 different areas: California, Northern Cal, Southern Cal, Florida, Panhandle, New Jersey, different demographics coming to all of them. No matter how you look at it. So how do we present to those different demographics? Everyone is handled a little bit differently.
Yep.
You have to do that because that's your guests coming into the facilities. So same with your own business. Who's coming in, who's buying, and who can I sharpen the pencil on the number as well as the experience? What can I do to create a better experience? Is it better service that you're giving to somebody? Because people will pay if they feel valued. If they don't feel valued, they're just like any other number. I kind of put it in my mind of like fast food. You go from one to the next, they're relatively the same. If the one that really stands out that has a better experience, you're apt to go back more often. And in my industry, family entertainment, the experience is, you only show up 1.6 to 1.8 times a year, twice a year. That's it. Can I get you to 3, 4, 5 times if I create a better experience? Yeah, I might do different events to bring you in. There might be things, but if you have a great experience there, you're apt to come back and be a loyal guest in our facilities. But if you don't have that, you're constantly fighting with marketing dollars to keep trying to bring new people in. So, I'd rather not spend the money on marketing, although we did really well on marketing, bringing people to us. Return on ad spend in our industry is about $5 to $10 for every dollar spent for ticket sales. So
Okay.
every dollar spent, you get $5 to $10 back in ticket sales. On what we were able to go to for every dollar spent, we got $25 to $65 back for ticket sales.
Okay.
So it's really getting people to say, hey, this is a
Yeah.
place I want to go to. Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't sell tickets online. I couldn't do these things if my experience wasn't good. My experience was horrible when we took over
Yeah.
because I inherited a bankrupt company that
Yeah.
was giving no experience whatsoever. I talked about the manager and the players, playing, cards there on one of the tables in one of the locations, like stuck in my head. It's like, we can't do these things.
Yeah.
We have to be responsive. And part of that comes back to when I was working at Disney for 6.5 years, you get indoctrinated with guest service, right?
Yeah.
How do we do this? And so, what does that mean with guest service? And, and I'll boil it down to this. It's like, you've got to forget your troubles before you go out on stage. That's what Disney, go behind the wall, go out from the tunnel, whatever it is that they've got. Forget your world. You had a flat tire. You were fighting with your spouse. You were, your spouse got fired from somewhere else. Someone in your family died. Yes, these are all things that you have as emotions and issues inside of you, but you're physically going on and acting so that you give the best experience possible to the guests, because they don't care. They're actually escaping their world.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to sync their stuff.
They want to forget about those. That's why they're there with you. And they can put their money anywhere they want to, but they chose to come see you. So why are you not giving them a good experience? So you have to segregate that you're giving, all my troubles are out. They're here to experience something good. So if it's going on stage, if the metaphor is I'm thinking I'm acting, then that's what you are. You're acting when you go on stage with guests. Now behind the walls, you can do whatever, talk about whatever, but don't let that get in front of the guests. And some of those simple things are kind of like what comes from Disney, but also you don't want packages that have been delivered sitting out everywhere. You don't want tools out everywhere. You want to make sure this place looks pristine. I'm coming in to give you my money. And at the end of the day, I hope that I walk out with great memories with my family. And if I don't have great memories, guess what? I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
So what happens in our industry is they put more money in. They're going to try to get people in that door again, new people to come in. How many new people can physically come in there and say, can't get
how big is the market? Yeah.
Come back and you have a horrible reputation online. So instead of worrying about the attendance to get in, how about I worry about the experience that will bring the attendance?
Yeah. You mentioned that when you kind of took it over, there were, I think it was 16 properties and you kept 8 or something like that. Like what were the criteria that you used to kind of decide which ones had potential and which ones were like, we just need to cut bait here?
There were 2 that were money pits right off the bat, and they were amusement parks. And the previous company bought them during the regime of 4 years. They bought some of these things and brought them together. I went and looked at those parks in the snow in north of Indianapolis in February, and Buffalo in a snowstorm in February. And I go, this is just too hard to come to. The upkeep on the rest of the year, it freezes, things break. You got a water park here, pipes are busting. It happens. Yeah. Right. So, why do we don't want those? All right. So there's that. Then there were 2 in the Dallas, Houston markets. I really want to be in the Dallas and Houston market, but it was the location that they were in. They had been there for 20, 30 years. One place, homeless encampment all around it. So you're trying to bring family into there. Yeah. And then the other part of it, when you drove out of there, was the adult area of the city. It's like, I'm not going to bring anybody in here. You're not going to do corporate events or team building events or parties and events. So unfortunately, those had to close. There were 4 others I really wanted in Southern Cal, but couldn't make a deal with the landlord. Yeah. So we calculated back rent of $168,000. They said, well, to stay here with all the things the previous company didn't do, it'll be $14.3 million. We said, forget that. We're closing those locations. But so with it, I look at the numbers. Why, and then I go, okay, can I market this facility next? What's the demographics like? Could I bring people to this place? Does this make sense? The city of Dallas and Houston are great, but the location was just hard. Both of them were horrible. The other 4 that we just couldn't make a deal, I could have made them work. It doesn't mean there wasn't 2 of those locations that probably wouldn't have been the best, but the other 2 were fantastic in the San Diego market and the LA market. But the bottom line is, I first look at the numbers. What's sucking when, and if I could stop the bleed and fix those issues, could this end up being a better facility at the end of the day? And the answer was no. I couldn't. If I put more money into it, it really wasn't going to improve it. I would have probably had to put millions and millions into those theme park or the amusement parks that was part of the portfolio. Again, I can't change demographics, so that just strikes it off the list. And then I look at the rest of it going, yeah, we're in some good suburbia markets or city markets or farm town markets and tourist areas. Let's focus on those. Let's really get those because we can create a great experience in those. And that's what ultimately led me to how we close those down. So numbers always talk to me,
Yeah.
and trends, right? I mean, how much money were you pouring into these amusement parks? How much more money were you pouring into the marketing to try to get people to go to these bad locations? Let's don't do this again. So let's go after what we can control. And that's where, how we took it from that point of view.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to ask about is the customers. You talked about really kind of focusing on what customers do I really want to focus on from an experience point of view, from a marketing point of view, and the whole kind of Target shopper versus Walmart shopper kind of thing. How to do that analysis? Because I find this a lot with companies. I'll go in and we'll look at their customer list or their client list, and we'll start looking at who's actually profitable, right? Like who is easy to work with, who's actually helping you promote, get other business. And I generally find the top or the bottom 10% of that customers actually cost them money. Right? Like they're actually, from a cost of service and what they're actually making. Like, how do you do this analysis, or what's the process by which you look at that customer base and decide where you want to focus?
Well, again, it's, again, one of our core values is profitable sales growth. So that meant we need to be profitable on everyone and grow sales. So how do you do both those things, right? I'm working for private equity. That's what they want at the end of the day, right? But, get the team to understand that. So let's look at our pricing structure. So we had single tractions, like you could do miniature golf or go-karts or laser tag or whatever. You could, they also had what was called like a season pass and ended up being an annual pass. And it's like, okay, so this $39.99 for the entire year, they're going to come in and they're going to run my go-karts every day, every week, whatever it is they're doing. Do you know how much gas? And then we had gas go-karts. How much gas goes into those things, let alone the tires and the oil and all? Am I really bringing anyone in? And the idea behind that when they do this, I mean, Six Flags is having one of these issues right now because the marketing model has changed and they don't know what's happened. They were down like 1.7 million in total attendance this year with all 40 of their parks. They're having problems. They're going to have to rethink this whole process. Dynamic pricing is one of those areas that might alleviate some of that pressure, but they got many more problems. But when I looked at it, I'm going, all right, I've got people paying $39.99 for an entire year. They're not buying anything else. That's my discounter that's in there. That's the people I want to fire. You were talking about the bottom 10%. That was more like 60, 70% of my total revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to get out of that business because we're just going to go deeper in hole if that's the case. I honored the season passes when I took over. And of course, I had the pandemic to deal with because we're open 4 times. So I extended them for a long period. But I said, anyone else new coming in didn't have that, you're going to pay the premium price, what our upfront price was, because I went from that experience to say, okay, let's do half-day passes, full-day passes. We eventually went to full-day passes, but with different tiers to it, like 3 different tiers. So you could get some arcade credits, you could do some different things, or food credits. Anyway, the bottom line is I wanted to get that person so we could pay for our bills in that day. What would it take to pay for the labor? Because underneath the old scenario was like a Ponzi scheme. I need more people buying season passes so that I can pay our labor today. Tomorrow,
for the people existing. Yeah, exactly.
And the next day and the next day. Well, when I look back over the numbers before we ever took over these parks, and I was consulting on behalf of them, when they put these season passes in, you saw sales go up and the individual passes go down. The total sales, right? And you start seeing it. So that was good the first year. So that was the hit. The next year kind of leveled off. And season pass and the single passes are just down through the floor. No one's really buying those, right? Leveled off. You weren't getting new guests coming in and buying more of these. The person that was my predecessor came from big theme parks, and that's what they had done there. Six Flags just happened to be the place he came from. But the point is, that's not how you run FECs. So you got to know your market. You got to know who's coming in. An FEC is a 15 to 20-minute radius of your home. That's where you go to go for different entertainment, food and beverage, potentially a bar, what have you. So then I started looking at year 3, year 4. Just through the floor, they were not selling season passes. But what did they do during this entire time? Stop spending on the parks. They spent no money on repairs and maintenance. They
Yeah.
didn't fix attractions. So what is that doing? That is giving horrible reviews. The reviews are just going through the floor.
Yeah.
They're not spending money on it. They did different little events for Halloween and Christmas, but it really didn't do anything because it was something added for the season passes. But when you're going through the floor and you don't have attendance coming in, when do you say stop? When I got to be profitable in these guests. So we changed our pricing. I honored those until the following spring.
Yeah.
We got through the whole pandemic, and then I started charging what it would take basically to come in. So we varied. We did have $39.99, $29.99 certain days, and other days we were up to $59.99.
Yeah.
So we had different things and different packages for people. But we taught our guests with all the changes we were doing too. We had remodeled all the bathrooms, we fixed all the carpet, all the tiles. We put money into these parks to make them feel fresh. A coat of paint will do wonders for a building. So wow, it looks new. Those types of things. The lights are fixed. Wow, that's
they're on.
It looks like they've really done something. But have we really? We hadn't. But we made it better for the guests. And now you're starting to make that asset more valuable. That, hey, this is something to come back to. You're starting to see the reviews tweaking up. All right, getting a better experience. And of course, we were not perfect from day one. There was a lot of things to fix along the way to get those reviews to 4.7 to 4.9. But the overall goal from day one is I want to do more online sales. I want to create a better experience. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I've got to get EBITDA numbers up so that it's a value in this company. We're going from a bankrupt company, worthless, to a value that Cerberus can actually sell for. That's my job. That's what I was there for. So I've got to keep thinking of each of the steps. Each time we could add more EBITDA to the bottom line, cash flow that we can pull through the park. I can save on labor. I can save on cost. I can charge a little bit more. All these little different combinations add more value. And we did an 18 million swing in a 2-year period. So we went from a -10 to a +8 in 21. So it just shows that you can do it. And it didn't happen overnight, right? That's 2 years right there we went through. But now we're showing to ultimately the buyer, hey, there's some value in this business that you hadn't been thinking about. But we've been thinking about each of these line items. Every time I would think about a change we'd make, what's the value it's going to ultimately leave for us? I had to teach the team this because they're in their mind, well, we need to do this. Yeah, safety's number one. Always do those things. But when we do these other things, does it add more value to the top line as well as the bottom line? Does it flow through? Does it throw more significantly than just what we were doing before with pricing and food? What are the things we can do in those areas? And that got the creativeness side of this. Like I would look at a piece of concrete and go, we got 4 picnic tables here. Could we make something better out of this area? We call it a boomer's backyard. Edison lights, grass carpets, comfortable chairs, fire pits, TVs in the wall to watch games. People hung out. Guess what? When they hung out, they stayed longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Stayed longer,
They spend more.
They spent more. So it's these little things you just go, this isn't so hard. And even when, if you've gone to a water park, you might get a cabana. So I look in another park that had concrete and I go, what if I put in areas like a cabana here, like we'll call it VIP areas, and they can go rent the space? Guess what? Sold out every weekend in Irvine, California. Sold out in Boca. Did so well, we tripled the size in Boca. Because people want their space. It's identifying the trends of what people do and want to do, and then getting in front of them. Because I don't know any other FEC that put like a cabana or a VIP area in. Now some may be doing that, but it was just pure profit. I mean, outside of the cost of putting up the nice little area and the lounge chairs and TV and a refrigerator and a place to plug in your phone, at the end of the day, it's just a cool little spot, but it now created more revenue. Right? It's paid for. I mean, as long as we maintain it, it's paid for. So it's these little things like that I just don't think people look at and say, what can I do with this asset? What can I do with this piece of concrete? Can I make something out of it? And I would pay attention. I'd always walk in, and I try to teach my team this too. Be the guest. What does a guest look at? Where do they walk? What do they see? What are they doing? Why are they there? But most don't take the time and do that. And I would have team meetings with my team and go, all right, do what I do. Let's go to the parking lot. Let's walk in. What does a guest see when they're coming in? Parking, is the landscaping look good? Is it clean? Trash picked up? Do you have rips and banners on the outside of it? Is a flag maybe ripped on top of the building? These are things guests see. by the way, the top of the building's not completely painted, even though we repainted the building. I can still see the old color up there. Guests see that too. Guess what? So those things need to be addressed. I don't know how many times I flew in when I moved back here to Orlando from Irvine. I would fly in and go, it's still not painted up there, guys. It's still not painted. Let's get this building painted. That's what I see. I drive around the parking lot, I look at, because that's what the guest sees.
Yeah.
So walk through, what is the guest experience? Are they being told of, educated on, hey, this attraction's down today, just want to let you know. But all the other attractions are open. We have a call box on there because we did some labor savings on this. If you press the call box, it'll come to our ear and we'll get someone over there to handle the ride for you. We had tilt-a-whirls, we had different things, teacups and so forth. So it's really, if you educate the guest, you make it look pleasing, then everything else is good. Now, I took him out in the park and I said, hey, I can't see the park. This is when I first got there. It's like, I see an attraction over there. I can't see the rest. It's trees and bushes were so big. Cut this stuff down. The guests need to see it. You need to see it as well to know what the guests are doing. But the guests need to see how everyone is having a good time.
Yeah.
This is an analogy I go back to when I worked at Applebee's. I worked for the former chairman and CEO of Applebee's. We had the Central Florida Applebee's. Picked his brain for 4 years. But one of the things he did, if you go into Applebee's, he sunk the bar lower. And there's a purpose and a reason behind that. So that's usually high tops in there, around the bar, in the bar area. Why did he do that? Because people who are dining will have the same eye contact as everyone in the bar. If they're having a good time in the bar, they're watching games or drinking, they're having a good time, then they're apt to have a better time too.
Yeah.
So same thing as a sight line across the restaurant is the same thing.
Fascinating. Yeah.
I want to see clear. If I'm out on the freeway on the 405 or the 101 that we had in Santa Maria, I can't see the park. Clear some trees out of here, and trim them up. If you're a tree hugger, I'm okay with that, but just clean it up.
Yeah, so you can see through it. Yeah.
I mean, we had hedges that were like 20 feet high.
Yeah.
You're like, why do we have these? Cut them down. They'll still grow. You take care of them, they'll still grow.
Yeah.
But it's these little things that makes a better experience for the guest, makes a better experience. And at the end of the day, it brings more people to you. They see other people having a good time and they go, I can picture myself there having a good time. That comes into the marketing. What do you put on the website? Are they immersed into what they're going to experience when they get there? Can they see all the fun stuff that's happening, the foods, the arcade and everything else? Can they see themselves? If they can see themselves there, then they will be there. Then you'll have groups and parties and group events and team building and all these little things are aspects, but always being what the guest is. So even if you have a service-based business, what is the service that you want to enjoy when someone comes to your building, your home, whatever it will be? Are you delivering on that, or are you just like any other service-based business that's out there?
Yeah.
So what is it the guest is experiencing? That's what you've got to be, and then say, okay, what are the steps we've got to take to do the things that they
make
would
that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious on I just want to kind of touch on your private equity experience, because I think private equity looks at businesses very different than owners look at. And I would be curious from your point of view, what do owners typically not think about or typically not understand about private equity in terms of when they come in and look at a business, the things that they're looking for, either in terms of valuation or what I call buyability, right? Something, that makes a company kind of buyable from a private equity point of view. And what do you think they should know? Owners should really know about this.
Well, I'll say one of the things that I've gone into a lot and I've seen a lot, especially with private equity, a lot of owners like to run a lot of things through their business, and it's like, okay, that's going to get stripped out. These guys are smart, you can't hide this stuff from them. But once you've stripped it out and you see the true earnings of the business, is it viable? One, every private equity is a little different as far as their threshold of what the buy. Cerberus is huge. Carlyle's huge, but I've worked with other ones that are very small. What's the EBITDA? They're going to look at the EBITDA number and can they reproduce this? Can they cookie cutter this business? In my case, I had 8 separate parks. You couldn't cookie cutter them. I mean, what I was working on was a plan to franchise our family entertainment centers, because they give you, for instance, our Boca Raton did an $8 million top line, throwing off 45 cents to 48 cents every year profit in EBITDA in that location.
Yeah.
It can be reproduced. Was it reproduced? No, because we took over these assets, but I said we could franchise this business and we can reproduce that. So what is a viable shoot of revenue that they can see? Because private equity says, I've got money, but I'd like to see reproduction of this money.
Yeah.
How can I've got more money I can put into this business and really expand it. It could be your partner coming in and you could still be running the business. But if you don't have an executable growth mechanism,
Yeah.
it's not going to be as interesting to them. It'd be more about, single family offices or VCs that would want to come in and say, let's grow that. But private equity is looking for how do we reproduce what we do and can do this on a continuous basis. A lot of times private equity goes into and says, I see, in our case, family entertainment, I think we can reproduce this. Well, their thought of reproducing is acquire, and you can't get the same type of results. Every place is a little different.
Yeah.
But if you can do like a restaurant, hey, they see an execution on a restaurant. They got certain prototypes. Applebee's was one I talked about already, the fast foods, McDonald's and Chick-fil-A, whatever. It's a standard model that we'd be willing to kind of look at because we know you're going to execute on the EBITDA in this location. It throws off X and we can reproduce that. So we know we can put money behind this and we can push this thing out. So if you don't have a business that can't really grow from that point of view, you're going to get value, but I think you'll get more value out of it if you can see the growth mechanisms associated with it, and they will see that with you. They will be a partner with you and say, I see that. Let's experiment. Let's put some money into this first, and let's see how this goes, and execute based off of it. So back to boomers, I saw my results. So I started saying, this is what my boss said to me first. Hey, you did so well with these 8 locations. Go find more around the country. I kicked tires on 50 of them around the U.S., family entertainment centers, without separate LOIs. What came back was, you're not going to spend our money. Find another way of doing this. Like, I had a $25 million credit line, couldn't use it. So they basically said, I said to them, look, I come from franchising, restaurants as well as rebounders trampoline parks.
Yeah.
We could franchise boomers, not a hard concept. We can size this down, but we need to give them something as a potential franchisee, as a prototype that they could come into. They're not just going to take some old brand and slap a boomers logo on this. We need to design something for them that can execute X amount. If I'm doing 45 to 48% in Boca Raton and I have 30% weather, could my margins go higher? My answer is I think so. Labor will be better. Utilities will be better. Other operating expenses I have will be better. I might get to 50% for every dollar taken in.
Yeah.
But what can I do for franchisees that I can replicate this? So from a PE point of view, they go, all right, you got a certain amount of EBITDA, great. Can you execute this again on multiple locations, or do you have to keep buying these individual ones that come with potential liabilities?
Yeah, exactly.
Issues. They want it simple. They want this simple that they can execute so they can grow this and flip it to someone else later on, 3 to 5 years down the road. So from a PE point of view, if it's not similar, I don't think they completely get it. Now, that doesn't mean that PE doesn't get into it. And they go, oh, we could do a roll-up strategy by just buying all these other ones. Well, I know a PE firm that's gotten into this. They have 7 different brands in family entertainment. And guess what? They're working pretty well in the one that they're building right now, but the rest of them are fucking win. They're down 30%. So, there's challenges PE has gone into and say, this isn't working just in a roll-up strategy because they're all different.
Yeah.
But if you can create some synergy or prototype design that's similar that you can execute in a cookie cutter approach. Applebee's was to that point. I worked for the former chairman, as I said. He built Applebee's from 52 units, from buying it from W.R. Grace, moved it to Kansas City. Today it's at Southern Cal. But he went from 52 units and retired with over 1,300. Yeah. So he did do something right on how to cookie cutter this. And that's what a PE firm is looking for to come into to expand. If you just think you're going to sell it and they're going to go, now it's your baby, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to figure it out. They're very smart. They're smart people. But if you don't have a growth plan on how to make that work, I don't think they're coming into it.
Yeah. Great advice. We're going to hit time here. Tim, this has been a pleasure. If people want to find out more about you, the work that you're doing, what's the best way to get that?
I think the best way is, reach out to me. My email is tim@timothypmurphy.com. You can look me up on LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me. I do have a website too as well. It's timmurphyceo.com. So very, very, very simple to get a hold of me. And I'm actually working on something pretty good. We were just talking about PE. I do have something that will be a cookie cutter approach in that industry. So.
Awesome. Look forward to hearing about that. I'll make sure that contact information is in the show notes. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Hey, Bruce, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.